Hello, everybody. For this week's discussion, I wanted to talk about Laurel Thatcher Ulrich's um, essay or discussion that she did on John Winthrop's City of Women and kind of how that correlated to, I wouldn't really necessarily say equality among women in the early English colonies, but more than what some people might have expected, women's rights or different freedoms, liberties they may have had in the early English colonies when the Puritans were coming over from England and stuff, trying to find a new world, a new place for themselves. Now, modern historians, women's suffrage, the right to vote, all came in the early 20th century. However, if you look far enough back in English history, you can actually kind of equate the similarities between the Whig Party in England in the, let's say, mid to late 17th century England to that of the Puritans and their rights to women as well. And if you the journal article that John Winthrop wrote, or his own personal journal, how he kind of talked about women's rights and stuff like that, is actually quite similar. And the difference, not obviously the difference, but the similarities between that original Whig thought, because they were Puritans as well, can be traced back to Oliver Cromwell. Now, quick brief history on Oliver Cromwell. He was basically the mastermind behind the equality of all citizens of England against the monarchy. His thoughts, led to the execution of King James, and basically set off a whole new revolution of how no longer was the monarchy the sole power in the country. It was the people who gave the monarchy the power, not vice versa. So among those different thoughts was equality among all people. It didn't matter, gender, it didn't matter skin color. If you were a citizen of the United Kingdom at that time, you had equal rights, and that included women. And that thought kind of transpired and crossed the Atlantic Ocean with the early colonies and stuff like that. And John Winthrop kind of talks about that a little bit. Now, he didn't go off and say, women deserve the same stuff as this as that, but he held women's role within the Puritan community at a higher level than some may expect. That's kind of, it's an interesting concept that, like I said, a lot of historians, maybe not historians, but people in general think that women really didn't get equal rights until, the early 20th century. But that's not necessarily as true. Yes, they didn't get voting rights until 1920 and everything like that. However, they still held an important portion within the community. And John Winthrop even described that women's role within the Puritan community was quintessential to that of the men's role. They were all a part of the cosmic effect on the community itself, the Puritan religious faith. Everybody played an important role. There were some different discussions that he had put out there. Says, sometimes, women sometimes go above and beyond the role in which he viewed as where their level was. However, the overall consensus was that they held an important role within that community, and it was very important. Just starting out in the early colonies, new country, everybody had a role to play, and women included in that. And it wasn't just stay home, raise the kids in the kitchen kind of thing. It was within the church, within the small circles within the community itself. They had a really important lesson to play. And there's some other sources I was able to kind of look at and bring together. Stephanie Kirk and Sarah Rivet, Religious Transformations in Early Modern Americas. They did their article basically compares and contrasts early Puritan women to that of the Spanish Catholics. Total opposite coasts of the United States, North America at the time, and the Catholic nunneries and some of the missions compared to the Puritan women's roles in the colonies in the East, and compare and contrasts, their different roles. And throughout the article, even though the nuns of the Catholic faith still were looked upon as important, they were not looked as important as the Puritan women on the East Coast. They held a higher standard within the church itself compared to their Catholic sisters in the nunneries and missions and stuff in the West Coast. So going back and forth, it's just, like I said, the journal article that Laurel Orch is really going over with John Witham, City of Women, is that they had an important role to play. They were important figures within the Puritan community. They were important roles within the Puritan church. They were able to testify just as men were able to testify and declare their faith to God. So I think it's very important that, it's a very unique historical fact that women didn't just receive all the rights they have today in the 20th century. They had important rights way back in the 17th, 18th century when the United States was still trying to become its own country. And you can kind of equate that to the Whig thoughts in England in the 17th century and their ideas that everybody was created equal regardless of gender. So, thank you.